Okay, so now what we'll work on is this section. You see the subtotal, tax, total, and this paid cash online and cancel button. Okay, so for this, first we have some empty space, then we have this border with the shadow, and then inside this we have this grid which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 columns. Alright, subtotal, tax, then these dotted lines, then total, then again dotted lines, and then these buttons. So 6 rows. Okay, so let's start working on this. So we'll go to pages and main page, and in this, after main thing, we have this vertical stack layout, grid.row 2, and in here we are going to have one border. Okay, we can run this application, we can see the design when we build. Let me run it. Okay, it's here. Let me again set it. Okay, so here we are going to have one border, and inside this border we are going to have a grid with 6 rows. Okay, so row definitions, and let's have auto 6 times. Whatever space they require, we'll provide that only with 2 content basically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and again one auto. We have 6 now. And for column definitions, we'll have 2 columns. First, label, that is a subtotal, tax, and total, and then second column where we will have actual amounts. Okay, so 2 columns, and the second column would have 2 buttons as well. So what we'll do, we'll make first one 40% and second column as 30%. Alright, so 2 star, 3 star out of 5 stars basically. Okay, and then inside this grid, first let's have one label only, then we'll keep on adding the labels. So grid dot row 0, grid dot column 0, and text subtotal. So we can see this subtotal here, and then with this only we'll have one more label with grid dot row 0 only, but grid dot column 1. Okay, and then text we are going to have, for now let's have some static text, let's say 2.99, then we'll make it dynamic. So now we can see 2.99 here as well. Save it, and now let's start designing this. So on this border, first thing, we will have background color as white. Okay, then let's have a padding of 10, then stroke shape, we will use round rectangle of a corner radius 10. All right, save it, and in this vertical stack layout, the top one, let's have some padding here, padding 15. So we need this padding from left and right. Okay, we will not have it from top and bottom. So here what we'll do, we'll say simply 15,0. Save, and or maybe we can have from top as well, right? Okay, so let's do this. Left 15, top let's say 10, right 15, bottom 0. Okay, save it, and again we are on border. In border we don't need this stroke, the border of border. So we'll say stroke thickness to 0. Okay, now let's add some shadow on this border. So we'll say border dot shadow. We'll have shadow, default shadow with the color brush as maroon, not magenta, maroon. All right, and let's increase the radius, shadow radius equals 10, 15. Okay, this is fine. Save it, and now we are good. Okay, now here we have these first two labels, and for these labels we are going to have some common styling for the subtotal, total, and tags, all these things. So let's do this. Let's create a style here. So we'll say content page dot resources, resource dictionary, and here we'll use style, and target type is going to be label, and X key, let's say label, or what should we say? Let's use LBL only. I don't know what to name it. Okay, and inside this we can have our setters, property, and value. Now first thing, let's use this, and then we can add styling to this, and that we can see while we design. So first label, let's say style, static resource, and LBL. Save it. Okay, okay, after subtotal we need tags, and that is going to be kind of dynamic thing there, because there we need this section from where we can actually tap on it and we can add the tax percentage. Okay, so this is going to be a control with two items in it. So we are going to use horizontal stack layout for this. We will have one label text and then another label with some different styling and tab gesture for that. Okay, let's do this. So for second row, we will have horizontal stack layout, grid.row 1 and grid.column 0. Okay, inside this we will have first label with text, and we can't see it. Let's try to hot reload. It is not coming. Why not? Okay, first let's add the things, then we'll see why it is not coming. Then second label for the tax percentage, we'll make it dynamic, but for now let's have 0% only. Save it. Let's restart. And it is complaining about this thing, that's why maybe that is not working. For now let's comment this out. This property was well empty. Okay, we have this now. All right, now for this 0%, we'll have some additional styling on this. First thing, we need a padding of, let's say, 5. Background color wheat. Okay, and inside this horizontal stack layout, both of these labels will set these as vertical option center, and on this one as well, vertical options as center. Okay, now let's have some spacing between these two, text and 0%. So on this horizontal stack layout, we'll say spacing to, let's say, 2. or maybe let's increase this 5. All right. Now padding from top and bottom, vertical padding does not look good with 5. So what we'll do, we'll have 5 from left and right, and from top and bottom, let's have 0. Yeah, it makes sense now. Save it, and we are good with this text as well. Now right side, we'll use similar kind of label. So let's use this text 2.99. Here the only thing we'll change, it would be grid.row1 and column 1, and then this text amount. Okay, so save it. Then after this, we are going to have the dotted line. So for that, what I did, I simply created a border. Okay, here we'll say grid.row2, and I want this to span for both the columns. So instead of saying grid.column, we'll say grid.column span 2. So span to both of these columns. Okay, now we can see this. Here we'll change the color. So stroke colors, stroke maroon. Now we can see this. Now we need this dotted line. So for this, what we'll do, we'll say stroke dash array. So 20 comma 5, 20 20 units line, then 5 units gap. This is what it is saying. So 20 units line, then 5 gap, then again 20 units line, then 5 gap, then 20 line, then 5 gap. This is how this works, stroke dash array. Okay, now this is looking a bit odd because we have this border. So border means it has border on all the sides. This stroke, basically, when I say this, stroke is from all the sides. So left, right, we are okay, but from top and bottom, we just need 1 unit. So when we want 1 unit, so what we will do, we will simply say stroke thickness 0.5. So 0.5 from top and 0.5 from bottom, it will sum up to 1 unit. So now this is looking nice. Okay, after this border, we are going to have our total. For this, what I'll do, I'll simply copy the first one. First, where I have subtotal and total amount. So here I'll do this, copy this, and I'm going to change the grid.row. Now it should be grid.row3 for both of these. And the text should be total. Alright. And after this total, we again need the same dotted line. So I'll use the same border. I'm going to just copy it and add it after these labels. And we need to change this grid.row to 4 now. Save it, and we can see this thing here. Cool. After this, we are going to have our buttons. So we have 3 buttons. Okay. So in this, what I will do, I will simply have a grid with grid.row. This is from parent. This is the last row, grid.row 5. And in here, I'm going to say grid.column span 2. I want to have it as a single column, and inside that I'm going to create 3 columns. Okay, so grid.column span 2. Inside this, I'm going to have our buttons. First button, or maybe let's define row will be 1 only, but column definitions. First, we want to have cancel buttons, whatever space it can take. Then we have 2 buttons for online and cache. Now what I need is, I need some spacing between those. So, okay, let me do this. First thing, let me have some spacing in these rows. So on this grid, what I will do, I will simply say row spacing. Let's say 10 or 5. Save it, and now we should be good. Now for buttons, let's add our buttons. First, we'll have a button for cancel. So I'll say button, which will be grid dot column 0. We need it in column 0. The text would be cancel. So here for this, I'm just going to use alphabet X. Okay. Grid dot column 0. This is fine. And why it is coming on this top? Because this is outside of grid. It should be inside this grid. Okay, cool. Now for this, I want background color as red. This is a descriptive button. Okay. Now after this, let's have minimum height request as 25 and minimum width request again as 25 only. Okay. Save it. Now let's copy this button, paste it, and here we'll say grid dot column 1, background color at some different color here. I like this color, that's why I'm using this, but you are free to use any color, whatever color you need, you want. Okay. And for this text would be, let's say, paid cash or paid online. So let's say paid cash. And then I'm simply going to copy it one more time, paste it, and this time paid online. And this should be grid dot column 2. Now save everything. Now we are good with this, but we need some spacing between these. So what we can do on this grid, we can say column spacing, let's say 5, not 54, 5. So we have this spacing. We are good with this spacing, but we need some more spacing. We want this paid cash and paid buttons, these two buttons, to go to the extreme right. So I want some spacing in here after cancel button and before paid cash. So because this is a grid, what we can do, we can simply have one more column. So after first column, I'm simply going to add one more column definition for star. That auto means whatever space is required for the content to fit. Star means whatever remaining space is there. So first is auto, that means whatever space this button needs, that is this 25 unit. Then star, whatever space will remaining from what? From this auto and from other columns. And these last two auto buttons, auto columns for these buttons. So whatever space these buttons can take. Right now we have this paid cash as column 1, but we need this as column 2. And we need this paid online as column 3. And boom. Now we are good. So this space, this is star, this is auto, and again these two are auto. So now we are good with this design. Now everything looks fine, but we can see this spacing here, right? I guess this is not. So yeah, for this one we don't have this left and right spacing for this center section, this middle section where we will have our cart items. Let's check why this is happening here. So if we check in the main grid, here we have this padding of 10 from all the sides. Instead, what we will do, we will have padding from top and bottom, but from left and right we'll have 0. Okay. Now when we have 0, we need to have some spacing on this first top section. So for that we can simply check, what is that? Is that grid or this vertical stack layout? This first one, this vertical stack layout is this. So here we can simply say padding, and this should be 10 from left and right and 0 from top and bottom. We are good with this. Okay. This looks fine now. All right. So save it. Now let's add some more spacing between these last. buttons and all this. So row spacing instead of 5, let's have 8. Okay, save it, and now we are good. Now next thing we'll do, these 2.99, 2.9 and all this section, we need these things to uh, center aligned in this second column. Okay, so let's move these to center. So 2.99 here we can have horizontal options at center. Cool. Let's copy this horizontal option center and add it to the tax amount, and then this total amount as well. So save everything and we are good. For total, we want to make it bold. For total, we'll simply say font attributes as bold, and then total label as well, font attributes as bold. Save everything and we are good. Cool. We'll make this dynamic, but right now we just want to have a UI ready and this functionality working, this 0% right now. So when we tap on this, let's open a prompt box. Okay, so for this again we are going to have one command. So let's open our home view model. In here, or maybe before that, let's have all these things, the subtotal, tax, total, all these things as observable properties, because these are going to be changed whenever we are adding any item to the cart, we are modifying quantity, removing items from the cart, then it should be the actual, these should be actual amounts. Let's do this. So here what we'll do, we'll have private, so this place does not matter, let's have this private decimal subtotal. This will be an observable property. Then we'll have private int tax percentage. This is also going to be an observable property. Okay, then we'll have tax amount as well. So this is percentage, and this tax amount would be calculated on the basis of subtotal. Okay, so that means this tax amount property will depend on subtotal and tax percentage. So that is going to be a computed property. So we will use public decimal tax amount, and this is going to be subtotal times tax percentage of subtotal. So we'll say subtotal here times tax percentage divided by 100. Okay, and then this total amount, this should be subtotal minus tax amount, right? Sorry, subtotal plus tax amount. So prop decimal, and this should be total. So subtotal plus tax amount, and now we are good. So now subtotal and tax percentage, these are observable property, these are going to be changed and reflected on the UI. But whenever these things are changing, we need to change these two things as well, because these two would be calculated on the basis of this, right? So whenever we are making any change to subtotal, we want to notify property change for tax amount, name of tax amount, and notify property change for, we can have it as a separate attribute here because our screen is smaller. So notify property change for name of total. Save. Okay, The same thing we'll add on tax percentage, because whenever tax percentage is getting changed, then also we should recalculate tax amount and total. Now we are good. Now we can simply display these things there. But this should be calculated. This subtotal, at least subtotal should be calculated whenever we are making any change in our cart items. So when we are adding any item to the cart, we are decreasing or increasing the quantity, or we are removing this item from the cart. At that time, this amount should be recalculated. Okay. So what we can do, we can simply, let's say, create a helper method here. Private void will say recalculate amount, something like this. Okay. And in here, what we'll do, we'll simply say subtotal equals cart items dot sum of what? Sum of c dot amount, and this amount is actually price times quantity. Okay, so now we will have this amount, and we are modifying subtotal like this. Now we should be good. Now when should we call this method? Whenever we are adding item to the cart. So here cart item dot add, and we are increasing the quantity. So here it should be out of these two if and else condition, because we want to add it anywhere, anyhow, if it was first add or second time adding the item to the cart. Same whenever we are increasing the quantity. So here now we can't have this as the expression body method. We'll do this recalculate amounts, and then we have decrease quantity. Here also we'll do the same thing. Then remove item from the cart. Here also we need to do the same thing. Or can we do something else? Let's do this right now. Okay, we have one more thing which we can try actually. So this observable collection, it gives us one event that is on collection changed or collection changed event. Okay, so collection change event gets triggered whenever we add any item to the cart or remove some item from the cart, from this collection, observable collection. So let's utilize that method. Okay, we have our cart items observable collection, and we have our home view model, this constructor here. So here what we'll do, we'll simply say cart items dot on collection changed or collection changed event plus equals cart items collection changed. We have sender here, and we have notify collection changed event tags, and inside this we will have what action was it add, remove, replace, move, reset. For all these options it triggers this notify this collection changed event. So whenever we are adding any item, removing any item, moving any item, that means changing the position index, reset whenever we are resetting the card, so card dot clear kind of thing, the collection dot clear, and then this replace, this is if we are changing any item directly. So let's say on index 1 this item was this one, and we are directly throwing this item and adding some other item at the same index, that is replace. But when we change any property inside one item, this is not a collection event, because using this we are not adding any item to the cart, we are not removing, we are not resetting, and we are not replacing this entire item. So when we are changing the cart, at this time it will not trigger this. Apart from this, it will trigger all these things. Same thing when we click on it again, This time it will not trigger this. So for these two operations, we will explicitly call that recalculate amount. But for all other, we can simply leverage this collection changed event. I hope it's clear. So here what we'll do, instead of doing this throw, we will recalculate the subtotal in here. Or we can simply call that method from here. Recalculate amounts. So here we'll say it will be executed whenever we are adding any item to the cart. Let's do this. Whenever we are adding any item to the cart, removing item from the cart, or clearing the cart. So for these three operations, it will recalculate. All right. So now we can come here, add to cart. Here we are adding, so it will automatically recalculate. So we don't need to do this. We'll move it here. Here we are increasing the quantity. So now we need to explicitly call this recalculate amount from here. Okay. Same thing when we are increasing the quantity, then it makes sense. When we are decreasing the quantity, then also it makes sense, but only if this did not come to this case. Because if it came to this case, then remove will automatically trigger that. So here we can say else recalculate. If cart and quantity is 0, we are removing it, so it will automatically call that, raise that collection change event, and it will recalculate the amount. So we are good with this. And from remove from cart, we don't need this, because from here it will trigger that collection change event and it will automatically fire this. So we can have this as same. And I guess we are good. Save everything. Save. Now we should have all our these quantities, not quantity, all these prices, tax percentage, tax amount, total, all to be in sync. Now we can reuse these on our UI. Let's do this. Main page. Here from the top, here we have subtotal. So we will use binding subtotal, and it is not coming. Why it is not coming? Maybe it didn't pick up. It's in running mode only, that's why it didn't pick up. So let's stop it and let's rerun. Okay, it's here. So it shows subtotal 0, which makes sense because we didn't add any item to the cart yet. But because this is a price, we will simply use string format for this, and we'll format it for currency. So 0:C and this. So now this is rupees 0.00. Save it. Let's copy this binding text. Come to the next one. Here we have this tax 2.99. This is for tax amount. Tax amount. Save it. Then again, this is for total. Here we'll say total. And we are good. We have this tax percentage as well. So let's change this. This is 0%. So here what we'll do, we will simply have binding tax percentage, but we want to have this percentage sign after this. So here we'll use string format. This time we'll say 0, whatever is the value, and after that we'll add this percentage sign. So like this. Save it, and now we are good. Let's try to add items. We added this item and you see 6.99, 6.99. Now energy drink 2.99. Now total is subtotal is 9.98 and total is 9.98. Let's try to increase the quantity. You see item, this amount is getting updated. Cool, it is looking good, right? We can use this, and let's remove this item directly from here collection, and we can see 6.99. That means all the counts are working properly. Okay, now let's check this text percentage. So whenever we click on this text percentage, it should open a prompt box where we will have our text percentage. Okay, so let's do this. For this, we will have one event, one command in our home view model only. Let's go to the very end. Here we'll say private async task, will say text percentage click async. Now when we click on it, we will display shell.current.display prompt async. First we have title, so let's say text percentage. After that we have message, so we'll say enter the applicable text percentage, something like this. Okay, and then what else we have? Accept button, okay is fine. After that placeholder, let's say for placeholder we'll simply say some normal text, let's say 10, which was 10% we could say. Then we also have one initial value in it, right? So this initial value should be whatever text percentage property has right now. So this would be text percentage. Now this initial value should be a string, so we'll simply convert this text percentage dot to string. We know this is never going to be null, it will be 0 by default, so 0 we are good. So initial value is 0. If we already have some value, it will display that value. And now we are good with this. Now it returns us a task of string. So let's store this in a result variable. Now this result, it could be any string, null or empty. So we need to have some check if user has added something to the text box or cancelled it. If user cancelled, we will not do anything. If user added something, then we'll do something. That something is going to, we'll check if string dot is null or white space result. If this is not null or white space, that means user provided something, user didn't cancel and user didn't add empty spaces in that prompt box. Okay, after that we know now user has added something to result, but we are not sure if that result, because that prompt box, it takes any string, but text percentage should be an integer number. So we need to sanitize this, we need to check if this was actually a number or not. Okay, so here we will say if int dot try parse, we'll try to parse it, parse what result, and we'll store that out int and value, and here this value could be text percentage. Okay, now if it was true, we are okay. If it wasn't true, that means the text percentage, this value was not an valid integer, it was some random string or some string. So here we will simply display an alert. So we'll say shell dot current dot display alert. Here we'll say invalid value, and we'll add a message, entered text percentage is invalid, and then cancel button, which will be just okay. If that's the case, we can directly return from here. We will not process further. Now if that's not the case, that means it was a valid numeric value. Here we will say, the message itself, so it was a valid numeric value. Then what we will do, we will check if that value was invalid in terms of that if it was greater than 100, because you can't apply tax more than 100%, right? Or can you? It is not practical, but let's have that condition. So here we'll say if tax percentage was greater than 100. So this case is up to you. If you really want to, you can add. If you don't want to, you can simply skip it. Okay. So here again we'll display an alert. So shell.current.display alert. Here again we'll say invalid value, and we'll say tax percentage cannot be more than 100, and then just OK button, and just return from here. Don't process any further. Now if that was also not the case, that means everything was correct, everything was right, tax percentage was a valid integer less than 100. Okay, now in that case we'll simply set our tax percentage, which is actually our observable property, to this tax percentage value, or let's say rename this to make it clear, entered tax percentage. Now we have set tax percentage. Now it should trigger this re-rendering, this value change on UI, and on the basis of this tax should be calculated accordingly, and whenever we will recalculate tax, at that time total should also be recalculated. Let's stop this and call this from the UI. We need to add relay command first. Relay command, go to the main page, and from here we can add where is the tax amount, tax percentage, this label. So we can have label dot gesture recognizer, tab gesture recognizer, and on this we can add our command, and this time this label, this is not a part of any collection view or any internal control, right? So it is directly inside home view model, so we can directly call our command from here. We'll say binding, and what is the name? Tax percentage click command. Click a command. Okay, I made a typo. Click let's remove this A and remove this A from here as well. All right, and do we need any parameter for this? No, so we don't need to have that command parameter here. Save it, and now we should be good. Let's try it out. I'm running it. Okay, everything is 0, 0. Let's add a couple of items, and we see 11.47, 0.00, 11.47, tax 0%. Let's click on it. It came. If we cancel, nothing should happen. Let's add some invalid value. Press OK. Invalid value, enter tax percentage is invalid. Then let's add more than 100. It will say invalid value, tax percentage cannot be more than 100. Now let's add a valid value. Let's say 10%. Okay. So now check this out. 11.47, tax 10%, amount goes to 1.15. So 10% of this 11.47, and then this also changed accordingly. Now if we'll do this, all these three items are being changed. That means we are good. Remove. So increasing, decreasing, adding items to the cart. So everything is working as expected. Now there is one thing, this cross button, on click of this, it should clear this entire cart. Okay, let's quickly do this, then we'll work on paid cash, paid online, because on clicking on this we need to generate and create an order. So first we'll simply work on this cross, canceling the entire order. So for this, in our home view model, we will create a command. We have remove item from cart. We don't have any directly clearing the cart item, completely clearing it. Okay, so here we'll create private void cancel order, or we should say clear cart. Okay, and on this we'll simply say cart items dot clear, and this clear, it will going to trigger collection change event, and that should automatically recalculate the amounts, this clear in the cart. So we should be good. Just add relay command and use this main page.xaml. Where is our cross button? It is here. So here we'll say command finding clear cart command and run. We should be good with this. Okay. Yeah, it was, this text is cropped, right, when it is in smaller screen, and then it goes beyond certain thing, then it simply breaks. So what we need to do, because our design expects at least this much width, something like this, so we will have fixed minimum height and width, so our application cannot be go less than that height and width. So we'll do that as well. For that, what we can do, we can simply go to app.xaml app.xaml.cs, and in here we can override create window method. Okay, and here this create window gives us a window object. So we'll say var window equals base.create window, and on this window we can set minimum height and minimum width. Minimum height 760, and minimum width, I don't know, 1280, and then return this window. Okay, so run it. It should have this height and width. So this is minimum. This will not be the default with what it would open. And it is again going. Something is not right. Window.minimum height, minimum width. Everything looks fine. Let's set the height and width as well. So the same thing, minimum height, window.height equals window.minimum height equals 760 or 780. Window.width equals window.minimum. Oh, I said minimum height, it should be width. Minimum width 1280, 780. Run it. You can tweak around with this with your screen size or whatever suits you and your application. It opens up with this. We can at least see this. Now it is not going further this. You see, I'm trying to do this, but we can increase it, but we can't decrease. Same thing would be with the height. I can't make it smaller than this, but I can increase its height. Cool. Okay, so now cancel. If we do this, we have this 18.90 and all this thing. Let's add 10%. Okay, now if I cancel this, I guess we should have some confirmation alert here and have tooltip, but right now let's try it. I clicked on it, everything is cleared, and all these subtotal, tax amount and total is 0. So that means resetting is working fine. We just need to have tooltip on this cancel and confirmation box on this. So this is in our home view model. Clear cart, right? So here, instead of doing this, we should have if await shell dot current dot display alert. Here, title clear cart question mark, message, do you really want to clear the cart? Then comma, we will have string cancel. This does not return anything, flow direction. And this one, this overload returns boolean. Here it takes two buttons, string accept, string cancel. What should be the accept button? It should be yes. Yes, we are sure we really want to clear the cart. And no for the cancel button. So for yes, it will return true. For no, it will return false. Okay. So here we have if, that means if it returned true, that means user pressed this yes button. Then only we'll clear the cart. Else we will not clear this. Okay. Save it. Async void, it should be async task and clear cart async. There will be no change in command name. And on main page, on this button, let's have tooltip properties dot text clear the cart. Save it and let's try to run it. Okay, it's here. Now if I hover over it, clear the cart, this is here. If I try to clear cart message, if you press no, nothing will happen. If I press yes, then it will clear the cart. So now we are good with this clearing cart as well. Cool. So it is fun. I guess we are good with this screen. Everything is working. All the functionality is working. We just need to work on this paid cache and paid online. So for this, we need to generate our order. So we'll create a separate order view model where we will have our order generation logic. That thing we'll do next. Okay. We are okay with this. Save it.